I think it's helpful for us to recognize our own human instinct toward self-reliance, which is really can be a form of pride. It shows up in some parables of Jesus where he contrasts pride with humility in a few different ways. And I think it's worthwhile for us to spend a little bit of time reflecting on some of those human instincts that we have and kind of teasing them out. Specifically, a form of pride that seeks justice, like I deserve this or that. A form of pride that seeks detachment, like I don't need somebody to provide for me. I want to do it on my own. Or a form of pride that seeks independence, that doesn't want the help of anybody else, that I can just be totally self-reliant. While very instinctive and natural for all of us, that's kind of our human natural instinct, is to pursue a rewarding life by making sure that we get what we deserve and we're, making it happen our way. Jesus offers what the Bible says and what Jesus himself says in Luke 18 as a 10 times more rewarding life by pursuing the opposite of those things. Instead of justice, it's mercy. Instead of detachment, it's provision from God. Instead of independence, it's dependence, which we've talked about recently. So let's spend some time talking about the instincts that we have that may actually be holding us back from the more rewarding life that God offers us by following Jesus.
Sounds like a plan. Welcome again to the Four Leg Norman podcast. If you're joining us for the first time, my name's Tucker, and this is Anson Hamberry. He is the lead pastor at Lake Norman Baptist. I'm the community pastor, and we're a church that exists to bring healing, connection, and purpose to people all around Lake Norman through the love of Jesus, and that's why we started this podcast.
Yes, it is.
So we're continuing in conversations that are based on the sermon series we're going through at our church right now. We usually preach through texts of the Bible. And then on the podcast, we take a different angle that we didn't talk about on Sunday morning and just kind of dive deeper into that. So, Anson, how about you tell us this week what we're going to be diving into?
Okay, so we're continuing in our series we're calling For God and Neighbor, which gets at the heart of everything Jesus teaches, everything that's in the Bible. Jesus said you can sum it up by loving God and loving others. And we've been in this series where we're looking at what does that look like to love God and love neighbor. And doing it through the Gospel of Luke. We're in Luke 18 right now. This is the story of Jesus teaching his disciples during a time where they're literally on the road to Jerusalem, where he would be crucified, buried, and then would rise again. And so Jesus, knowing this is the path in front of him, and it's getting closer and closer, you see some more urgency coming out in his teaching of his followers. And we're just noticing that and learning from it in this sermon series. Kind of leaning toward the parables that show up in this section. The Gospels, and we've noted this before, he teaches through parables. He teaches through sort of direct lessons. He teaches through situations. He'll say, notice what's going on here. And so I'm kind of favoring the parables. We're not hitting everything in this section, but we've looked at several parables of Jesus and how he's teaching. And so that's what I'm in the sermon this week. I do the same thing and notice a couple of parables that Jesus offers about what it means to love God and love neighbor.
Yeah. And I think that's really helpful because I feel like for a lot of people, the parables are kind of the most perplexing parts of what Jesus is talking about. So to provide some color and background to what Jesus is really getting at there, at least for me, has been really helpful.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. It's certainly helpful for me. And one of the things about parables, scholars who study this form of literature and this form of communication and teaching in the time of Jesus, what do you do with parables is an interesting study. And one of the things that has been a part of my training and teaching and how to read and understand parables is that whenever you're looking at a parable from that time in history, whether it's in the Bible or, this was sort of a way they communicated in this culture, you're looking for one main big idea. A lot of times you can look at them and kind of allegorize, like looking for this. Well, this piece of the parable represents this. This piece of the parable represents that. Sometimes that's true. When it is, it's usually called out. So like when Jesus gives the parable of the soils, he actually explains it and says, these different soils represent these different things. In the absence of an overt explanation, more often than not, a parable exists to make one central driving point. And so in the sermon series, I do my best to kind of get at that main point, or a collection of parables, which I've pointed this out several times. The gospel writer Luke is, sharing these teachings of Jesus, these parables of Jesus in little groups, and together they make a point as well. And so that's what we're looking at this week. And I think the main one big idea that emerges in this section of Luke 18 is that to love God and neighbor is to cultivate a rewarding life of humble trust, which is kind of an oxymoron in our way of thinking, because we all want to cultivate a rewarding life. Like, who doesn't want to have a rewarding life both today and when we look back on our life to go, yeah, that was the most rewarding life that I could have lived. Like, that's one of the, it's in our DNA. This, it's natural for all of us. We might define rewarding in all sorts of different ways, but that's what we want. And what Jesus teaches is the most rewarding life actually comes through some counterintuitive ways of living, cultivating some things that are counterintuitive to us. And so in the sermon, I draw out three contrasts that show up in three parables of Jesus: the contrast between mercy and justice, the contrast between provision, like being provided for, and detachment, like being on our own, and the contrast between dependence and independence. And it's three well-known parables. In the sermon, I go into the parables and kind of how Jesus makes the point. In the sermon, I talk about kind of the positive, humble values of seeking mercy rather than justice, of seeking to be provided for, like a child would, versus detachment and being on our own, and seeking dependence, like dependence on God and other people rather than being totally independent and self-reliant. So we kind of get into those humble virtues that we need to cultivate in our lives. But I think, as is so often the case, like what's so helpful in learning is actually identifying the opposite of those and realizing actually it's much more natural to say, to seek what we think we deserve, or to do things on our own. It's the Frank Sinatra, to do it our way. I want to do it my way, and to not depend on help from others, but to be as self-reliant and independent as we can possibly be. That feels like strength to us. And so I just think all of us tend to seek a rewarding life by pursuing justice, getting what we deserve, by pursuing detachment, doing things on our own, pursuing independence, not needing to depend on the help of others. And I think it might be helpful just to spend some time talking together about how that shows up in our lives. And then, just if you're listening to this, just thinking about your own instincts, because I think a little self-reflection, a little self-awareness on what comes most naturally to us might loosen the soil and open us up to receiving Jesus' teaching of what he would say is 10 times more rewarding than anything we could ever accomplish for ourselves.
Yeah. I think the adding that word humble ahead of trust is really key, because in our culture, you hear so much about like, yeah, trust your gut, or trust in yourself, or follow your truth. And like, it's all prideful ways of exercising trust.
Self-trust.
Yeah. Just like trust in yourself. But that humble trust is having the humility to say, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I can figure this all out on my own, and I do need the help of others. And
Yeah.
in all these categories that we're talking about, I need the help of God first and foremost. And I just think humility is one of the biggest gaps we have, I think, in who we want to be and who we actually are on a day-to-day basis. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But like our pride, I think we're often more prideful than we realize.
Right.
But we would probably say we want to be humble.
Yep.
We want to lead with humility.
Yeah.
But practically, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And I know for me, I may think I'm humble, but a lot of times my actions, like in my marriage or even sometimes in my job, are more so carried out in pride as opposed to humility.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I think that's worth talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this section of Jesus' teaching can be so helpful, because it might shine a light on some of those areas that we don't think of as prideful, but actually are. And they're hurting us. They're holding us back from a life that could be a lot more rewarding.
Yeah.
If we understood like kind of the pieces of what that means. Because I think, when we think of pride versus humility in just a basic sense, at least my mind goes to, okay, what is pride? It's, thinking very highly of myself, right? Maybe thinking I'm better than someone else. That would be pride. And humility would be the opposite of that. Thinking less of myself. So if things, show up in my life that those sorts of attitudes are pretty easily recognizable. But if in general, if I don't think I'm the greatest thing ever and, overtly, right? Like chest puffing, proud, right? I go, okay, that's not me. But pride might show up in my life, first of all, in this first category of assuming if I got everything I deserve, like if I got justice, that's going to be the best thing for me. Well, justice is a good thing, and we talked last week in the teaching. Jesus, his positive example was a poor widow who sought justice for her life, and he says she bothered God for that justice, and he says, good for her. We should do the same thing. So, justice is good. We've talked about it biblically. It's a theme throughout the Bible. It's a virtue of God.
Yeah.
Justice is good, right?
Yeah, and it's something we're told to pursue.
We should pursue justice. Where it kind of gets twisted is when we apply that to ourselves, and what we want is justice for ourselves in whatever area of life we think we've been wronged. Which, okay, in many cases that may be true. But if justice is our main thing, what we're assuming in that is that we've done everything right. And injustice is, I've done everything right, but these bad things are coming my way. That's not just. So inside of that plea for justice or instinctive desire for justice, I think it shines a light on pride that says, yeah, because we want good things. Justice, we mean, is good. But what if we haven't always been right? What if we have done some things wrong that were hurtful to others? And justice is actually not something good. Justice means punishment, right? So like when we say we want justice, we assume we attach that to good things. But in reality, we're all guilty of wrong attitudes, hurtful words, harmful actions. Like none of us is perfect. None of us has done everything right. So really what we want is mercy. Like,
Yeah.
what we need is mercy for the things that we've done wrong, not justice, assuming we haven't done anything
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the way you're describing justice makes me think of a word we use in our culture often of entitlement.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's like this I deserve this mentality.
Mhm.
And whether you have done what's necessary on your end to have that thing or not, it's like, well, I deserve it.
I deserve it.
It should be mine.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to me, that's the most helpful way to think about it. As
Entitlement.
like, yeah, because I think justice is viewed as such a good thing in the scriptures. So to view it in like the way we're talking about is kind of, it's difficult for me to make that jump, but
Yeah.
a word like entitlement makes it more like, oh, okay. Like,
Yeah.
I get what we're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably a really good distinction to make, because we use the word justice,
Mm-hmm.
assuming that what's just is always going to be a good thing we feel entitled to.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, if we really got justice, then that's going to be a mix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we all have guilt. Like, we're all guilty of doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so if God gave us what we actually want, justice,
Mm-hmm.
we might not like a lot of it.
Yeah.
And maybe there may be more punishment coming our way than reward coming our way, if that's what we insist on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think it is an entitlement mentality. We feel entitled to all the good things that we want, and we think of it as justice.
Yeah.
Because we're proud.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
also think it can be tied to like, people talk about having like a victim mentality.
Yeah.
Of like, this wrong's been done to me and somebody needs to do something about it.
Yeah.
Not, we don't switch to the ownership mindset of like, okay, a wrong's been done to me, regardless of whether I had anything to do with causing it or not. I can take responsibility for this thing and say, not that I'm responsible for the action that happened, but I'm responsible for what I do moving forward.
Right.
A victim mentality would say, this wrong's been done to me, and I'm going to blame somebody out there who has to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just this endless, like, and if you know someone like this, the way you know if you're around a person like this is you always feel like you're walking on eggshells around them. At least, and I heard that as part of a book I was listening to, and I was like, yes, that like is so true.
Yeah.
You just constantly am like, I don't want to say the right thing. I don't want to
The wrong thing.
step on toes. Or if you feel like that around someone, like, yeah, that's a relationship that's draining. So we don't want to be those people.
That person?
Towards others.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But sometimes that can be a blind spot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's really kind of what we're talking about, is like, where might these blind spots show up?
Mm-hmm.
Because, sadly, I think it's true to some degree of all of us. When we assume it's somebody else's responsibility to fix an action that has come our way that we don't like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not to like, there is sin in the world and evil things happen to people who seemingly don't deserve it all the time. And so what I'm trying to describe is not to discount the hurt that's caused by people's evil actions, but to say that each of us has a choice. And at the flooring company I worked at, one of the higher ups used to always say this: you have a choice to either be an owner or a victim in almost every situation. And so if you work in the construction industry, if you're listening, things always go wrong. It never
just part of it.
It's just part of it. It never goes smoothly, and you have a choice. You can either say, okay, this job is just a train wreck right now and it's everyone else's fault. Or you can say, okay, there's things out of my control that happen that are making my life hard.
Yeah.
But what am I going to do about it? Yeah. And then that's how you take ownership of the situation, as opposed to in a prideful way saying, well, they created the mess, so they got to fix it.
Yeah.
And, who cares if it makes people mad or makes the job not go well? Like, they got to fix it because it's their problem. It's just a different way to think about those situations. And that's a silly example. I know there's way deeper examples of people experiencing hurt. And then it's like, well, what do I do? Like, abandonment from someone who's really close to you, or just a deep betrayal that happens. Like, that can be harder to say, well, like, I am a victim. It's like, yes, you are. And we are so sorry and can't imagine the hurt you must be experiencing from that. But you can still have ownership in that situation by saying, like, okay, what am I going to do next in response to this thing that's happened to me?
And sometimes justice does mean somebody else being held accountable for what they have done to another. So I'm not saying it's always, the ownership responsibility of, I'm not saying there's never a case where somebody is a victim. That can be true too. But I think for most of us in most situations, the prideful instinct is to assume if my life is not as rewarding as I want it to be, then there's been a great injustice. And somebody else, ultimately God, needs to fix it so that I get justice. And by that, I mean the rewarding life that I want. I think that's kind of where we live, and that's just not true. And so there's plenty of things we need to own in that. And so life is more of a mix. Like sometimes justice is what we need when we've been in the right, someone else has been in the wrong. But more often than we care to admit, we've been just as much in the wrong as somebody else. And even when it's kind of a benign thing, like a construction situation, we punish ourselves when we get so bent out of shape with a perceived injustice. Like when you're talking about, things always go wrong on a job site. So my son just started as an apprentice electrician.
He's diving into the
construction it's
world. Been
super fun. Every day he comes home, he's working 10-hour days, just working his tail off right out of the gate, which is good for him. And he doesn't complain about it. He's always got a good attitude and just a affable, easygoing dude. So he was telling us just yesterday, came home and his mom and I, try not to like pounce on him with all our questions, but we're like super interested. What'd you do today? Like, did you pull some wire? Did you hook up some connections? Did you bend some pipe? Like, tell us all about it, So he didn't want to tell us all about it. So we try to curb some of that enthusiasm. But yesterday he was telling us they spent most of the day redoing something that they had done wrong. He's talking about some run of pipe that they had, installed or whatever, conduit for wiring. And then I guess they had whatever they didn't match, like the length of the conduit and the length of the wiring. One of them was shorter than it needed to be. And they had to go undo all the things that they had done and start over again because either the conduit ran out before the wire needed to go, or the wiring ran out before it made it to the end of the conduit, one of the two. But he was like, that's what we did today, was fix our mistake from, whatever. Now, that could have got him all bent out of shape. Like, I can't believe it, all day long. And I could totally see a scenario where I would get super frustrated, because for me, that's one of the things I just hate. I hate having to undo something that's been done. I hate, being on a road trip. And back in the day, before we had the blue dot on our phones or on our car screens that always guided us, when you're following a map, like I just remember being young and like if we ever missed an exit on the highway and drove, out of our way for however many miles and then had to turn around, that just burns me up, I could see, somebody in a job site situation, just nothing to do about it, still getting paid. But just being all, that would absolutely be my frustration and instinct. what an injustice,
Yeah.
somebody didn't measure this thing right. We all wasted our time.
Yeah.
So like, that's probably what it is. Wasting my time to me feels like an injustice.
Yes.
So I want to pound my fist and go, justice, I need justice whenever someone has wasted my time. And it's even doubly bad when I've wasted my own time. Like now I need justice against myself. And I don't know what to do with that. So I'm just all, all worked up about it until the moment passes and I cool off. And then I just wasted more time by being all upset about it.
Yeah.
But that's what it is I feel like it's the injustice of wasted time. But how, in that moment, am I considering mistakes I've made that wasted other people's time? No. Am I in that moment considering how much of God's time I've wasted just knowing what I should do, but I do something else? And do I want God to come at me with the record of how much of his time I've wasted? No.
Nope.
I need mercy.
Yeah.
Not justice.
Yeah.
But in those moments, I think I just deserve justice. So I think that's kind of what it boils down to in the human heart is when we get worked up about a perceived injustice, we completely lose sight of how we might be at fault for that very same thing. And if God kept the kind of record that we keep, that we don't really want justice.
Yeah.
We really want and need mercy.
Yeah. And I think in all three of these categories we're talking about that, because you made a good point. Like we do want justice for people.
Yeah.
But I think what we're getting at is, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago, of like when he says, why do you point out the speck in your brother's eye when you have a plank in your own eye? What we're trying to bring up in this conversation here is the plank, reflecting on the plank in our own eye.
Yes.
Not necessarily what's going on out here, but how do we deal with each of these categories?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Because I think we don't want to, we want to have enough time to talk about that. So we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about all the issues out here, which are valid.
There are real injustices
that causes hurt. That's evil. Yes. But what we want to focus on is, okay, but there's this plank in our eye.
Yeah.
And what are we going to do about that?
Yeah.
And, going back to something going wrong on a job site. And I remember, so I still am in touch with some people from there. And while I was there and then after I've left, the people who reacted to situation or problems in the company, problems with jobs, things that went wrong, injustices that happened, the ones who would complain and complain and complain and complain and complain and be like, woe is me, I'm a victim. No, they wouldn't say those words, but the ones that would go on like that versus the ones who just accepted that this is part of it and then worked towards finding solutions for things. The people who did the latter are doing incredible. They're like top in their office in sales. The project managers that are that way are killing it. They're managing multiple large jobs. And the others are either their time at that company ended when I was there, whether they got fired or found a different job, went somewhere else, or since I've left, they have found their home elsewhere through one of those two ways. Which I think is just a telling, like, if we want a rewarding life, I think that's evidence of like, the life we want is deeply rooted in this ability to humbly desire to extend mercy to others as we have had mercy extended to ourselves, rather than this entitlement for justice.
Yeah. And it's counterintuitive, but when we fight tooth and nail for immediate reward, I mean, your illustration is a good one. We're losing the ultimate. It's more rewarding to just let it go.
And work towards a solution.
And work toward a solution. Yeah. Like you fight for the reward less. It's actually more rewarding in the end. And we can give up better reward by, in the moment, like fighting for it.
Yeah.
So there's one contrast. I mean, we could, now that we're talking about it, we could probably keep going on this one.
Yeah.
So there's a contrast there between justice and mercy and how we pursue a rewarding life. And that came through, the parable is a tax collector and a Pharisee. And the Pharisee's proud and says, thank you, Lord, that I'm not, a jerk like that guy. I'm way better than him, appreciate, Lord, how good I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Deserving of every reward, right? And whereas the tax collector, he was the picture of humility, crying out to God for mercy, saying, I don't deserve anything, but Lord, please be merciful to me because I know I'm a sinner. And so there's where the story came from. The next one is the situation where, Jesus was going about his teaching, people are flocking to him. Some of the people that were flocking to Jesus were little kids. And so the little kids wanted to be around Jesus too. And his disciples were like shooing the kids away, don't bother Jesus, don't bother Jesus. He needs to talk to the grownups. And Jesus says, no, don't do that. Let the little children come to me. And in fact, if you don't receive the kingdom like a little child, you're not going to receive the kingdom. And so what he's getting at is this contrast between provision, like being provided for, like a child, like they're dependent on their parents for provision, versus kind of a detachment, like being on our own. And so he's saying, look, if you want to enter the kingdom on your own, you're not going to make it because it needs to be provided for you by God himself. And you don't earn the kingdom. You don't conquer the kingdom. You receive the kingdom as a gift from your heavenly Father. And so little children don't, they don't resist the idea of being provided for. Whereas adults oftentimes do.
Yeah.
Like we don't want to be provided for. We want to provide for ourselves. We want to be on our own and do it. And again, kind of like we keep caveating, we do need to, there is a healthy, we need to not mooch off the system and always have people providing for us. So there's another side of this coin always. But what I think Jesus is addressing is wanting to pursue a rewarding life in this life and in eternity by detaching ourselves from being provided for and getting things our own way. And Jesus is saying, look, like little children, they accept what's being provided for them by their parents. Same with us and God. And if we want a rewarding life, then allow God to provide it for us. And trust that he will. So that's humble trust. Like it's much more humbling to know that you do need to be provided for, that we can't provide everything for ourselves. Pride would say you can provide anything you want for yourself. And that's kind of where we want to live because it feels better.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's easy to start thinking of examples of, I don't want someone else to provide for me. It feels much better if I can provide for myself. Feels much more secure if I can provide for myself.
Yeah.
Because there's a vulnerability to waiting for someone else or ultimately for God to provide me with what I need. But that's exactly what Jesus is saying is we need to come to God like a little child and be okay receiving what he provides for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I like how you use the word detachment because I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about shame. And up until the conversation we're having right now, I've never really thought about it in this way. But I think because they were talking about how shame, you can't distinctly tell a difference between how you feel when you're feeling shame and how you feel when you're experiencing fear. So like, if you've ever thought about being afraid to tell somebody something that you really care about and you're freaking out because you got to you have to confess something, but you have no idea how they're going to receive it. So like you start to get hot, your cheeks get red.
Yeah.
And when you think about how you feel when you're experiencing fear, it's not all that different in your body,
Okay.
the way that those two things feel. And so they were talking about how shame, what's really going on, the reason it isolates us and makes us detached from other people, including God. And you'll see this when people are going through a lot and they're experiencing a lot of things, they'll often isolate or
Right.
not want to.
Yep.
We see it in church a lot.
Sure.
But what shame is it's a fear that the connection you have with that person is going to be affected if you tell them what it is that you're wanting to tell
The
them.
truth.
The truth, yeah. To be honest, to be vulnerable. It's like a fear that you coming clean about that is going to sever this relationship that you care about. And that can happen. I mean, so a lot of it's rooted in like our attachment styles we developed growing up. Like if you had a parent who abandoned you and your family, then you're going to have an even heightened fear of, you're not going to want to depend on people because you're scared that if you do, you're going to become a burden to them, and then they may
abandon
you and abandon you.
Yeah.
And so I think the detachment piece, there's a connection to shame there. And I don't think I ever would have made that connection before until I understood more about like, what do we mean when we talk about shame? And there was another thing I was watching where John Ortberg, who just recently wrote a book called Steps, he's spent a lot of time in AA communities and Alcoholics Anonymous, and he's reflected on just the spiritual nature of those groups and how it reflects back to Christianity. And he talks about how if Christians could become more like alcoholics and their just shamelessness of confessing their need of, I have this problem and I know I can't beat it by myself, so I'm going to commit to coming to this group to talk about it and confess it to other people, because one of the first steps is acknowledging that you need a higher power to help you overcome this thing in your life. Yeah. And so it's exactly what you're getting at of this dependence. But but I think a lot of times shame is what keeps us from depending on other people, along with pride, I guess. Yeah. So there's kind of like two.
Yeah. So let me kind of reflect back and see if I'm understanding kind of this idea of shame that you're talking about. So you're in a relationship with somebody, you've done something wrong that you feel bad about, that you're ashamed of. And so there's a fear that if I confess that thing to this other person, that they won't provide love, acceptance, forgiveness. And so the shame that we feel, we feel bad. And it's also, we're afraid that this thing is going to cut off the thing that I'm depending on this person to provide for me. If I think of it in a marriage most specifically, right? So we have a covenant with one another that we're going to love each other through the ups and downs. But my fear is that if I do something bad enough, my wife is going to stop providing me love. Yeah. She's going to stop providing me acceptance. She's going to stop providing me with forgiveness. If it goes, is that kind of down the lane of shame that you're thinking? Yeah, but I think as we are having this conversation, I think it extends even beyond that to a shame in the sense of, I have any type of need. Yeah. And I'm not going to bring it to this person because they might think it's a burden. I might be bothering them. They might think that I'm needy. Yeah. And they're going to leave or distance themselves or whatever the outcome may be. So I don't think it's isolated to just like confessing a sin or that you've done something wrong that you feel really bad about. I think it's also just an unwillingness to ask for help because your shame in the sense of fear of losing the relationship is keeping you from doing so. Yeah. Yeah. And so the way to protect ourselves is to not need anything.
No.
But like, that's what we tell ourselves,
Yeah.
right? Like if I detach, if I detach from myself from a relationship that I depend on for provision, then that's a much safer place to be.
Right.
If I don't,
Yeah.
if I don't need anything from you, Tucker, then I feel safer. But if I need you to provide me with something for my well-being, well, that puts me in a vulnerable position because you may choose not to provide it for whatever reason. And so I don't like being in a relationship where I need what you can provide.
Yeah.
If I can provide everything for myself in a detached way, then I feel more in control. I'm more in control of my own rewarding life. And I think that's, we've kind of gone to the deep end here.
Yeah.
But I think, I think there is a human instinct, a prideful human instinct to detach ourselves and ultimately from God. Like, if I can do it on my own, detached from from requiring provision from God or anybody else, then what I'm saying is I'm good enough to provide, for myself on my own.
Yeah.
The reality is we need God to provide for us.
And we need other people to provide.
And we need other people to provide for us.
Yeah.
And so, like a little child coming to God and being okay with that, like, I need things that only God can provide. I can't come up with them on my own. So I'm only harming myself if I detach myself and try to go my own way. Which, I mean, that's kind of connected to, we talk about repentance all the time. Is, I always quote Isaiah where, all we like sheep have gone astray.
Yeah.
Each of us has turned to his own way. And that's one of the definitions of sin and rebellion against God, is just doing things on our own.
Yeah. Because
we don't want to be in a relationship situation where I can't provide for myself. I have to have somebody else provide for me. That feels vulnerable. That feels weak. Feels humiliating, maybe. But that's why I think humble is a key word here.
Yeah.
Humble trust. Having the humility to acknowledge I need God and others to provide things that I can't provide for myself. So I'm not going to detach. I'm going to attach myself to God like a child attaches him or herself to a parent. And that's where a rewarding life is going to come from.
Yeah.
But it takes humility.
Yeah. And I think, gosh, there's so much we could say about this.
We can leave
now.
This
We're getting into attachment.
I don't want to go any deeper than we've.
Yeah.
To get us in a hole we can't climb ourselves out of.
Yeah. But I do think the antidote for overcoming shame is experiencing the love of God and provision of God extended to you through other Christian brothers and sisters. And so I actually think for a way to practice, like, I guess, getting better at not detaching is find just one Christian you trust, and the next time you spend time with them, be a little bit more vulnerable about something going on in your life than you normally would.
Yeah.
And then just notice how they respond. And as Christians, when we're in those situations, we have an opportunity to be the image of God in how we respond to people who are being vulnerable to us or overcoming their shame by bringing their need to us. We have an opportunity to respond in a way that reflects how God would respond to them. And that helps form healthy attachments that help us overcome shame.
Yeah.
So I would say start small, just by sharing a little bit more about a need you have than you normally would. And then as you develop that trust in that relationship, you can do that more and more, and it'll actually help you love God and love your neighbor better.
Healthy attachments are more rewarding than unhealthy detachments.
Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking through this recently too, but I think even unhealthy attachments still help us love God and love neighbor better. Not to say that we should stay in toxic, unhealthy relationships, but a lot of times we detach from people we don't want to be around because they drive us crazy, and we see really toxic behavior, or we see pride and we're
Yeah.
like, no thanks. And so we back away. But the more I've reflected on it, if the goal of what God's trying to do in our lives and our spiritual formation is to help us grow in love in anything in life, you learn not only by positive examples, you learn sometimes more from negative examples.
Yeah.
So bottom line, I think we need attachments to one another, and in the good and the imperfect, to help us grow in love.
Yeah, which I would say we can have healthy attachments to unhealthy people.
That's a good distinction.
And very often we're the unhealthy person. That if nobody was willing to attach themselves to us, oh gosh, we need. I mean, in every season of life, we go through seasons where we're the ones that are unhealthy. We're the ones that need healing. And Lord help us if nobody is willing to attach themselves to us. That feels awful. And God help us if God won't attach himself to us when we're the unhealthy person. So, yeah, I think.
And God will.
And he will, and he does. Perfectly, and with perfect patience, where we run out of patience. So I'm actually glad we waded through the deep end on this one, because I think it brought something to light that I would not have thought about. And it is like, we need healthy attachments. We need to be the healthy one who's willing to attach ourselves to unhealthy people, and we need people who are in a healthier place than we are to attach themselves to us. And we certainly need God to attach himself to us, to provide us with what we need. All of that requires humility with whichever end of the relationship we're on. And it's our own pride that's going to cut us off from that says it feels too vulnerable to be attached. So I'm just going to detach and go my own way. And we lose out. In normal ways in life, and in big ways in terms of what God wants to provide for us. So humble trust. Provision, accepting God's provision versus detaching and not being like a child. That was a big one.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Number 3. Well, hopefully this one doesn't get as big, even though this is the longest parable of the 3, but we won't let that drive us longer. The parable is about a rich man, and once again, similar to what happened a few chapters ago in Luke, he comes to Jesus and says, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And very similar to the answer Jesus gave before, love the Lord your God, love your neighbor as yourself. He says, keep the commands. And this guy says, "Well, I've been doing that since I was a kid." Check. And Jesus says, "All right, well then there's just one more thing. Go and sell everything you have and give it to the poor, and then you will inherit eternal life." And that was a bridge too far. And the rich guy's like, I don't know about that. And overhearing this conversation, Peter speaks up, Jesus' lead disciple, and says, "Lord, we've given up everything that we've had to follow you." And Jesus says, "Yeah, and you're going to be rewarded 10 times more than if you had not given up everything." And so he's just saying, it kind of relates to the provision idea that God can provide a far more rewarding life and eternity than we can by accumulating, achievements or possessions or whatever else, that by letting things go, choosing to depend on God. And I think the point here is once again, Jesus is exaggerating to make a point.
Mhm.
You know, it's not that he literally needed to sell everything that he had. But what Jesus was saying was depend on God, you know, sacrifice enough that you need God.
Mhm.
And the positive example was the disciples, and that's what they did. Like they
Mhm.
had, okay, Lord, we've turned away from being totally independent on our own, and we're depending on you, Jesus. So here we are. You tell us where to go, you tell us what to do, and we're doing it. But we're dependent on you, and we've sacrificed our independence in that way. And so I think this is a similar thing to what he's teaching in the parable with the children. And he's saying, depend on me. And when you do, I can provide a lot more reward than you can independently of me.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think this one, we live in a culture of such hyper individualism
Mm-hmm.
that this one's like really hard, I think, to wrap our minds around, because the culture that when Jesus came on the scene is very different from the culture that we live in today. So like, we see the disciples' reaction to Jesus's call to follow him, and we're like, oh, that's good for them. And I don't think we realize like what all was involved in that decision, because they lived in a very collectivist style of culture. So the family was of utmost importance.
Yeah.
And and this is even a difference in our, when I say family, people probably think nuclear family, like mom, dad, kids. But at that time, family meant like aunts, uncles, cousins, great grandparents.
Yeah.
I mean,
what we would call extended family.
Extended family, yeah. And they had this deep commitment to one another. They depended on one another in a family unit. And actually, I've been fascinated by this, but a book I'm reading said that the sibling relationships were actually the closest within the family. So when the New Testament writers use the term brother and sister to describe the relationships in the church, they're using the closest relationship in their culture to describe what it's like being in community with one another as a follower of
because
Christ.
siblings in that culture were relationally more connected than parents with children.
Yeah. And way more relationally connected than I would say siblings in our culture today are.
Right.
Not all, there are some close sibling relationships, but
no, I think that's true. I mean, just thinking about my own family and just what's common, we have this expectation that parents and children are a very close, tight bond, but siblings can kind of drift apart and go different ways. And I mean, I see it in my own family for sure. In terms of the priority of those relationships, like each sibling kind of has their relationship with parents. Yeah. That is probably honestly a greater priority in most cases than siblings with each other. Anyway, go ahead. That's interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah, it struck me as well. And they also, one thing we have to think about is like in our hyper individualistic culture, which I think is probably a good thing. We have the freedom to choose who we marry and who we don't have our parents choosing that for us, or our family speaking into it, really, maybe in some cases. But back then, I mean, your family pretty much decided who you were going to marry, and you would consider, you were willing to do it if it benefited the family as a whole, not just you. So today we think, who's going to be the best partner for me?
Yeah.
I don't really care if they get along with, my parents or my sibling. Or it's just, is it the best fit for me? And so anyways.
So we're making a decision, a life-shaping decision, maybe the most life-shaping decision.
Yes.
Based on our own independent well-being. Yeah, independent of our family.
Yeah, which I'm not saying we need to go back to that.
But I think it's worth pointing out.
And
Yeah.
I think what it does is it speaks to the importance of those relationships in that time. So like when Jesus calls Peter, James, and John, who are fishermen, likely they were working in their family business because that's what you did at that time. Like if your family were fishermen, you were fishermen. And so when they choose to leave that and follow Jesus, they're saying, I'm leaving the closest relationships I have to join a new family.
Mm-hmm.
And those relationships are going to now become my priority.
I'm depending on them.
Yeah. The same way I would have depended on my original family, I'm going to now enter into this community and have the same level of priority, commitment, and dependence on those who follow Jesus as I would my original family, which I think is just, in our culture, is so hard to even wrap our minds around. It really is.
That's what I was just thinking, because we think much more independently within our own family unit.
Absolutely.
So how can we even use that as a way to understand how we should be dependent on God and on Christian community?
Yeah.
Like we're so steeped in independence, which, another caveat, independence is good. You know, like the Declaration of Independence, I'm all for it as a nation. Great.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about our own way that we live our lives, especially our spiritual lives, we're programmed that way. And we think that's the most rewarding thing, is to independently provide for ourselves all that we need. And, oh, by the way, pursue our own justice, to connect all these ideas. But it's not true.
Yeah.
Like the reward, and this is where this section closes, is God says, you think you can provide the greatest reward for yourself by seeking your own justice rather than mercy, by detaching yourself rather than being provided for, by being independent, rather than dependent. But God would say, I'm telling you, 10 times more rewarding to cultivate humble trust in God. Goes against our pride, goes against our wiring, goes against our culture, goes against everything that's most natural to us. Even talking about it, like, I don't like it.
I mean,
but God said, do I trust God or not? You know?
Yeah. Because it's so upside down from
It is.
We live in a world where it is incredibly common for, like, I'll say hypothetically, if I were, thankfully I still live close to my parents, and Haley is still close to hers, in proximity sense. But let's say I would have taken a job at a church in Arizona.
Yeah.
That happens all the time.
I did it.
Yeah.
Not Arizona, but Chicago.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that's always a bad thing. I think God can move you in whatever direction. But just to say, the way we think about family is so different from, like, in that culture, that would have never happened. Like, they would have never moved across a country away from their family who would have supported them, helped them.
Wouldn't have even had an opportunity to.
Yeah. But it's so common in our world today. We live in neighborhoods, but we all have, privacy fences and even at church, it's
detached homes.
Yeah. And in churches, it's the Sunday morning experience. It's very easy to come in and individually get what I feel like I need without, ever interacting with anybody else in a larger sense, if that's your mindset. So like the whole dependence versus independence thing, I just think you see it everywhere in our culture. And again, I think there's some areas where we've made good advancements as a culture in that, and we've evolved in the sense of, like, there's healthy things that have come with that. But just acknowledging it, I think, shows us that we when we see Paul talk about brothers and
Mhm.
sisters and unity in the church and like the familial language he uses, we're just like, oh, that's sweet for him to refer to those relationships that way. But I
Yeah.
don't think we understand
Uh-uh.
the weight with that. And and I would say the sacrifice that comes with that.
Yeah.
And that's where the humble trust comes in.
Yeah.
It's like, to be a part of a community like this, to depend on God in the way we're talking about, to depend on other people, comes with a great deal of
Mhm.
sacrifice, hardship.
Mhm.
It's not going to be easy. There's going to be conflict. And I think that scares us because it's something that's out of our control. And the more independent we are, the more we feel like we're in control.
We do. So humble trust versus proud independence.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But proud independence is something that in our culture is celebrated.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And so this is hard to undo. It's
Yeah.
hard to unwire.
Yeah.
Probably in universally, but particularly in our day and in our time, something we need to chew on. And God as the one who brings the greatest reward.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, and I think it's worth taking a step back and saying the Bible speaks of the kingdom of the world and the kingdom of God.
yeah.
And too often we let our Christian community be heavily influenced by the kingdom of the world as opposed to the kingdom of God.
Yes.
And you can't have, there's a line I love by a band from my hometown called David Brothers. And they have a line that says 1 foot in and 1 foot back, but it don't pay to live like that.
Yeah.
And so we can't have 1 foot in the kingdom of the world and 1 foot in the kingdom of God. And to come fully over here is going to require a lot of sacrifice and living very counter culturally to the rest of the world around us. Like if you you radically reorient your life around looking at the church as a family in the sense of how the New Testament writers would have looked at it as a family, it will look so different and probably foolish to people around you.
Yeah.
But we have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because ultimately God says that's where we'll find the rewarding life that we're looking for.
Yeah. There it is.
Yeah.
This was a deep one.
It was, yeah. And I didn't know
if you're still with us, thank you for hanging with us through the deep end. I hope it's some nuggets. I feel like some nuggets emerged for me that I had not thought about. So I'm grateful for the conversation today.
Yeah. I feel like we were getting into like social I don't know if sciences is the right word, or like cultural
behavioral science.
Yeah, behavioral science, stuff like that.
Hopefully not too far out of our depth.
Yeah, I hope not. Yeah. Well, I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
So thanks for teeing it up for us, and thank you guys for listening and sticking with us in the deep end. Hope you brought your floaties, and we'll see you on next week's podcast.
All right.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the end of the episode. If you're enjoying these conversations each week, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button right here on YouTube, or the follow button wherever you listen to podcasts. It's quick, it's free, it's easy, and it makes a huge difference in helping our podcast reach more people in the Lake Norman community. Thank you for supporting the For Lake Norman podcast, and we hope you have a great week.